Welcome to the WriterDojo with your host, Steve Diamond.
Larry, there's something out in the woods.
And Larry Correia.
Get to the chopper!
Today's episode, Supporter Spectacular, Round 5.
Everybody, welcome back to the WriterDojo. We're here. We're back.
And Casey Azell is going to yell at me for saying chopper.
Oh, Casey. We're so sorry, Casey.
Casey's a professional helicopter
To make
pilot,
it up to you, we'll get you on the podcast at some point to talk about stuff. All right. Today, everybody, we're back. You guys keep sending us wonderful questions. So by you sending us wonderful questions, that means, Larry, it's time for another Supporter Spectacular, baby.
Fantastic. And we got some really good questions.
Some dope questions.
Some of these are pretty basic and we'll be able to hit pretty fast, and others are a little more in-depth, and we will visit them, and we'll probably wind up visiting them again.
So, all right. Some of the questions we have, the vast majority of them are from supporters. There were a couple that came in that weren't from supporters, but they're freaking awesome. They actually came in through the voicemail system that Anchor has that I honestly didn't quite know it existed very well. And
yeah, we just found that. So no offense if these have been waiting for a while.
Now, what we might do if people keep sending these in, and you, the listeners, are okay with it. Well, by you, the listeners, I mean the people who are submitting the questions are okay with it. Once we figure out technology and crap, we'll just play the question on the air.
Yeah. So
that I'm not paraphrasing you. But anyway, so I'm going to actually start with a couple pretty quick basic ones. Okay, Larry? So this is from supporter David. Question 1. What concerns should we be aware of, including copyright, libel, and slander, for using actual companies and people in fiction? Google, Comcast, Glock, Joe Biden. I'm not referring to plagiarism because we all know that's bad, of course. Is there text added to a story to avoid legal action? Now, you have some experience in this because of of Tom Stranger.
Yeah. So, okay. So the basic rules are you can talk about real companies and real people, as long as you don't slander or violate those libel and slander laws.
Yeah. Basically the idea is if you harm their brand, things like brand dilution and brand, I just looked this up today. What was it called? Something else, whatever. Idea is if you're talking all sorts of crap about them and accusing them of all sorts of stuff in your fiction, probably a bad call.
Like, for example, if I was to use, say, Taco Bell in a story and have people eat at Taco Bell, that's fine. If I wanted to even, talk about how they ate at Taco Bell, they didn't like Taco Bell, that's fine too. But if I start talking about, how Taco Bell, puts bleach in the meat.
And everyone knows that they're poisonous.
And then the characters die from eating Taco Bell, now that might be skirting a lawsuit. So you talk about Tom Stranger. What I did with that was, because it was pop culture and it was current events, so every time I've written a Tom Stranger, Audible's lawyers have had to go and read through it.
And they've had to change stuff, dude.
And they've had to change stuff specifically because they're like, this person will sue us for this. And there's one point I made a joke about a certain movie star in the first one with her scented candles and her medical advice. And I had to change that to a certain movie star because this certain movie star will sue people like crazy, apparently.
Yeah.
And then there was another one involving Juicy Smollett.
Yeah. Juicy Smollett, that French actor.
The French actor, Juicy Smollett. Who
you know the reference?
Yeah.
Oh,
He was in Murder of Manatees because they're like, hey, we need someone to fake a hate crime. Who's the best person to fake a hate crime? And so he appears as a character. And I had to tone that scene down.
Allegedly.
So yeah, so actually, because the lawyers wanted me to put allegedly more. And so there's actually this really funny paragraph where I use the word allegedly 9 times in one paragraph, talking about stuff he clearly did.
At the end of the day, it turns out you were writing nonfiction at the time.
Yeah, and actually it's funny because I wrote this before he was found guilty in a court of law. So that was one of those we just had to cover our butts, so I made that funny. So that's basically what it is. Those are your rules. You can use real people. Now, for using...
If you're using them in a positive light, go nuts, kid.
Well, and also there is that thing at the beginning of the book on the copyright page where they said all resemblance to people living and dead is hereby accidental or whatever.
This is purely coincidence or something.
That's to cover your butt should you use people's names in a way that they don't like.
Now, tangentially related, you probably shouldn't be quoting lyrics from songs and stuff in your work. That's generally frowned on. You have to be pretty careful with that.
Also, quoting things that are more modern, or like quoting books that are like not out of copyright.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
tread carefully with that. If you're traditionally published, check with your publisher on that and what their rules are. If you're self-published, be careful of that. As long as you don't go nuts or rip people off. Yeah, I've actually been ripped off, and it's but that's getting into the plagiarism that he's talking about.
Okay.
We all know that's bad.
Okay. Question 2, and this one's super easy, but it's actually hyper important. And that's after submitting short stories for publication, and I'm assuming therefore after they've been published, how do you republish that work as your own anthology later? Does the original publisher of your work have legal rights to prevent you from republishing the work?
No, that is going to be in your contract when you originally sell it, and it's called the exclusivity period. And Steve and I have both published collections of our short fiction, most of which appeared in other anthologies first. And as long as you're outside the exclusivity period on the contract, you are good to go. Now, I still checked with each of mine individually. I emailed every single editor before I compiled Target Rich Environment 1 and 2, just to make sure that I was, reading this right and that I was in the clear and not stepping on anybody's toes.
Well, heck, you even emailed me because one of our co-authored short stories is in there.
Oh, yeah. So and I did the same with Jonathan Mayberry, because I had a co-authored story with Jonathan Mayberry. So the same thing. I wanted to make sure that I didn't step on anybody's toes, and I wanted to make sure it was cool with everybody else.
Now, generally, and forgive me, I kind of blanked for a sec if you already said this. In most of my contracts, especially those with Bain, it basically says a year.
I think a year is pretty standard.
I've also seen 2.
I've seen a year. I've seen a year
18,
and a half, and I've seen 2. Yeah.
I did see one that said 7 years.
Ooh, jeez.
And I said no.
Yeah,
I said,
say
look,
no to that.
I said the most this can be is 2 years. And they moved it down. Everything in a contract is negotiable.
Yeah, you guys would be surprised. If you see something in a contract that just seems extreme to you, there's nothing wrong with questioning that. Last episode, we talked about nonfiction. There's a thing called right of first refusal in publishing, where like you write something for a publisher and then you write something again, they get first crack at it. However, I had to go back to my nonfiction people and say, I'll give you guys first crack at anything nonfiction I write.
Yeah, but not blanket.
But fiction, you got to take that off.
Yeah, no freaking way.
Yeah, no freaking way. And they're like, oh, of course, obviously we didn't think of that. And because everybody's using a boilerplate contract.
Yeah.
They use the same contract for everybody. So yeah, that's real simple. Just check your contract. It'll tell you what the date is. And don't sign up for anything that's stupid long.
Well, and look, like that's actually important, right? Because being able to take these stories, most anthologies you're in, you're only going to get your fee for, like your upfront fee, and that's basically it.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. Like, and I've been in like 30 anthologies, and I think I've gotten like royalties after for like 5.
Yeah, for me it's 2.
And one of them's Monster Hunter Files.
Both of them are from you.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Monster Hunter and Noir Fatale.
Yeah, they both earned out and still pay.
And and I'm assuming that that Noir Fatale 3 Down These Mean Streets. That's what we're calling it, right?
Yep.
I'm assuming that one will be equally successful.
You know what's actually interesting is like I am shockingly financially successful as a editor of anthologies.
I was having this conversation at Gen Con, and I was telling a couple people because they were talking about how terrible anthologies were because of pay.
Yeah, you're saying being a Larry Correia one.
And I said, man, actually, I think it was me and Maurice.
Oh, Maurice knows.
Because Maurice is in that same one, and he was talking about how they were like, when there's 6 New York Times bestsellers in there, he's like, man, you just do what you can to get in. Because that one will actually be successful. And I looked at him, I said, I think that's the same. I said, I think we're talking about the same anthology. He's like, we're talking about the same anthology. Maurice is a stud.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
So thank you, David. 2 excellent questions. Next question from our boy, supporter, Rick Cutler.
Hey, Rick.
The evangelist for us. We
love
him.
Rick bangs the drum for WriterDojo.
Rick, dude, I can't swear. We freaking love you. All right. I'm gonna redshirt you in a story, Rick. I'm telling you right now.
That's cool.
So freaking violently. All right. Rick is less of a question; it's more of like a suggestion. But I want to hit it very briefly, and assure him that we've seen this, we've listened to it, and we've listened to him, and you and I already have plans to answer this one with dramatic fashion.
Okay.
And that is, how about a few episodes on how to write a battle in space?
Oh,
Now,
yes.
you've done this.
Just once.
You've done this once. Have I written any?
I did Gunrunner. We have a space battle,
I'm trying to think if
but not a big one. But however, we do have some friends.
We know a few people with very big names.
They're very, very good at this.
Who have made entire careers out of this and
who have offered to come on the show.
Yep. And
we need to work it out.
Now here's what I will say. I'm just going to say as kind of a blanket statement. I love the way David Weber handles space battles. I think he transitions really well from handling the actual fleet movements and making them seem logical in your brain, to going into the inside of say the bridge or wherever it is that the main characters are, or in different places around the ship, and showing, because space battles are interesting because there is the battle of the ship between the ship, but then there's always the best space battles for me. There's the sub battles that happen within the framework of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the crews fighting their own ship as damage comes.
Oh yeah.
You know, and or fighting each other because one person thinks they know better than the other, and stuff like I love that interplay so much.
On Basilisk Station,
Oh
the book that made David Weber
so good,
made his career, some of the best parts in there is like this during the space battle, the damage control scenes.
Dude, they're so good.
They're so good. Yeah.
And then another author who I want to shout out, who I love his stuff, and that's Jack Campbell, the Lost Fleet series. He does this so well. Now his is interesting because he addresses the concept of the three dimensions of space. I was trying to come up with a better word for that. I can't. I'm a writer or something. But so he explains it at once at the very beginning, and he's like, look, human brains don't comprehend that super well. So here's the framework to comprehend it better. And he gives it to you, and then he sticks with it the entire time. And it's pretty simple. And so it's pretty easy to see it. Now, in his scenes, it's a very similar thing. The ships are passing at such high speeds that it's basically just whoom, and they're just going by each other. And it happens in the fraction of a second. And yet he's able to describe the manner, what is happening and all that. And more importantly, what they're doing to get ready for that pass, and then what they're doing to again, damage control type stuff after the pass has happened. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
We'll definitely revisit this with some guests. Is that do this better than we do.
Oh yeah. So thank you, Rick. You're the man. We love you. All right. Here's some of the, let's see.
Do we want to take a break first and then come back and hit the meaty ones?
We're gonna take an early break. We don't normally do this. We're gonna take an early break so that we can hit these last ones, because these last ones are pretty cool questions.
They're a little more complicated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we'll be right back. Give us a sec.
Less than a year ago, Tom Ormson, a dragon shifter who also happens to be half owner of the George in downtown Goldport, Colorado, became one of the most powerful magical creatures in the world. This should be great. He's getting married, and his wife, another dragon shifter, is about to deliver their child. Which is when everything comes apart and Tom finds out that being the head of a shifter clan is about as stable as being the king of a small, fractious country. As long-forgotten, semi-legendary dragons and minotaurs and beasties of various descriptions come out of the woodwork, it becomes clear they're ready for a Ragnarok, a time when the heads of clans fall and are replaced. As if that weren't enough, Kiri's birth family has surfaced, pitching her into the politics of the Lion Clan. And there was a murder in the parking lot of the George whose solving just might set the city on fire. Bowl of Red, the fourth book in the Shifter series by Sarah A. Hoyt, is available for pre-order on Amazon. Reserve your copy today.
Welcome back to another glorious edition of the supporter spectacular for the WriterDojo, Larry. Okay. These next set of questions, these are going to be the ones that we heard on the voicemail. Some of these, the people identified themselves as supporters, so I believe you. Some didn't. I'm just going to assume you are. And if you're not, you can easily rectify this situation.
Well,
it's pretty sweet.
I mean, they're calling the thing on Anchor, so they're probably supporters.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Regardless, your questions were too good. So anyway, and some of these questions go back several months. Sorry.
We didn't know this existed.
Yeah. I remembered it was there. I just happened to be scrolling through all the options on my Anchor app, and I saw the voicemail thing, and I went, oh yeah, that's a thing. And I clicked, and there were several messages. One of our boys, his name's Ahmed, he asked, so this is a very nuts and bolts question. And I like to have these very nuts and bolts questions interspersed with all the other ones. So this one is, Ahmed was asking specifically about structure. He was asking for structure in terms of the lengths of paragraphs, in terms of sentences. And how do you structure sentences for dialogue? Because he was talking about how the structure in fiction for these sorts of things is very different than that of essays. And he's absolutely true. In our last episode, we talked about nonfiction versus fiction. And I know, and you know, the way I write those and the way you write those is different than our fiction. Mm-hmm. The way you're telling the story, so to speak, is different. So, okay. So let's start with lengths of paragraphs.
Yeah. Now, my rule of thumb on paragraphs is variable.
Yep.
I do not want too many paragraphs the same size. Now, the question is, how big should the paragraph be? I divide up my paragraphs according to topic.
Okay.
So rather than size, and unless I have too many that are the same size in a row, most of my paragraphs are going to be 3, 4, or maybe 6 sentences for a long one is a big long one. Most of mine are really 2 or 3. And they're going to be the way I divide them up is let's say I have multiple characters in a scene, and I'm writing Son of the Black Sword right now, number 4.
Yeah, Tower of Silence.
Tower of Silence. And so if I have, I was doing a scene with Rada and Carno, right? And I would have Rada doing some actions and having some thoughts and having some dialogue. That's one paragraph. But then I don't add any of the Carno actions to that same paragraph. He gets a paragraph. Okay. I tried not to subject switch within one paragraph.
Oh, okay, sure.
Unless it is necessary, like a transitory piece of action. Okay. So if I say something to you and then you react and I respond to your reaction, that could all be in one paragraph, right? But if I say something to you and then you need to act on your own to come back from what I said, that's getting its own paragraph.
Right.
And another trick I like to do is I call it looking for white space.
Yep.
Yeah, so you do that too.
Mm-hmm.
It's the river effect. So as you're scrolling through your manuscript and it's on the screen, look for big chunks of white. And when I say that is if your paragraphs are all really short, like dialogue, and it's just everything is the same size, and so you have this big white streak down the page, that's usually a hint to me that I need to vary it up more.
Well, and I also do the reverse, which is if there's a substantial lack of white space.
Yep.
To me, it's funny. It's very almost. To me, it becomes a visual aesthetic.
Yeah, wall of text is unappealing.
Nope. No, it's super unappealing to me.
Yeah, it actually has a psychological effect on the reader too. So if you have like 4 or 5 dense 4 or 5 sentence paragraphs in a row, just boom, 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 boom.
Oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I've done it before. I mean, shoot, I did it. There were sections of Servants of War where I did that and where you did that. And we edited each other's things to break it up just naturally.
It looks like a textbook when you have that.
And no one likes textbooks.
Yeah, it actually kind of psychologically, when you see a dense text page like that, it kind of sends a message. It's unwelcoming to the reader.
Now, one of the things that I like to do, so Ahmed, so think about it this way. You're having all this stuff. You're thinking about the number of sentences in your paragraphs and stuff. And we're telling you we're giving you some techniques upon just for the visualness, just for the ease of readability. The other item I want you to consider, Ahmed, and for all you other listeners who have the same question, is how can you use this to your advantage?
Oh yeah.
And I feel like I might have said this on one of our previous episodes, but I like to use paragraph length and sentence length to artificially change the flow of pacing.
This is something that, like, when I was editing you
saw me do this a lot,
I saw
right?
you do that a lot, and there's a couple of them where
It was too much in a few places.
it was too much in a few places. And other times you were super smooth with it.
Yeah.
You know who the grand master of that trick is?
Huh.
Dan Simmons.
Oh, yeah.
Dan Simmons will do the thing where he'll do ultra dense informational paragraph, pithy sentence.
Yeah.
Pithy sentence, funny joke, ultra dense.
Yeah.
You know, he you don't want to ever like have too much of one thing. It's kind of like when we talk about writing action or pacing, where we got the sine wave going up and down. Sentence structure and paragraph structure is just a more granular, like cellular version of that same principle.
There's been a couple times where I will intentionally, it's almost like I'm writing a poem. You know, poetry is one of those things where it has rules for some reason. And I don't do well with rules, Larry.
Well, that's the thing. As fiction writers, we can toss a lot of sentence
throw away all that
rules
crap
out. Yeah.
But so I'll try to remember where I did this, what story I did this in. But I have this. My first paragraph was literally 5 lines. Then the next one was 4. Then it was 3, and 2, and then a 1-liner. And I did that because not only does it kind of look cool on the page, but it creates this artificial almost time bomb. And I'm setting you up for feeling like that something's happening.
Yeah.
Like whether you realize it or not, something's going down. And it's all these sentences, they're just slowly, or quickly, I guess, coming down to a head to one big thing.
Yep.
Now that 1-liner has to be punchy, or you've wasted your opportunity.
Yeah, because if it's not punchy enough, then what was
then
the
what were
point
you
of
doing?
the journey?
Yeah, what were you doing?
There's one of those, like, we're telling you all this stuff, but like a lot of this is just you're going to learn by feel with practice.
Now, the other thing that Ahmed asked was the structure of sentences and dialogue, because they can be a little different than just like your expositional stuff.
Oh, yeah. What I'll do in dialogue is interesting, too, because remember, we actually had a whole episode about dialogue, especially in like writing with audiobooks. Biggest weapon I can say for that is read it out loud.
Yeah.
Because dialogue is very peculiar to the ear.
Mm-hmm.
And it's either going to read natural or it's going to read unnatural. And actually, Ahmed, I'd recommend go listen to that whole episode. We got a bunch of advice on there on dialogue.
And to be honest, I don't know if based on when he sent this question in,
we don't know what
if that episode had already come out by then or not.
Yeah, we don't know what the voicemail thinks.
If it didn't come out by then, Ahmed, go listen to that episode.
Yeah, try that one. That hopefully will help. But honestly, the same basic rules apply. You just want to vary it up. If all your dialogue is the same size,
if you're starting it with the same word every time.
Yeah, that's the other trick too. Is I like to go down the paragraph looking for I,
yep.
he, she. I'm basically looking for word rivers.
Word repetition.
Yep, and because word repetition is kind of gross. It doesn't read well.
When you and I give each other stuff to review from each other, we do the same thing. That's one of the very first things we start pointing out is, oh, hey, word repetition here. You've said the word indubitably or whatever. Like 3 different times within 2 sentences.
The word cataclysm shows up 3 times on this page.
Yeah.
Which was what's funny.
We literally count this, guys.
Yeah. So this is just a thing you watch for in your editing. And you'll miss it, honestly, yourself. Oh. This is the kind of thing that extra readers catch because usually you miss it because you're too close. And sometimes you have to use the words over and over again, but limited.
All right. Ahmed, I hope that answered your question.
That's a good question.
Good questions, dude. We love it. I'm just writing a note down to myself so that I don't forget to say something. Give me a second, listeners. Jeez, so demanding. All right. Sorry, I'm on a lot of caffeine right now. All right, here we go. Evan asked us, how do you write about violence without glorifying it, especially when that violence is directed towards the young or the innocent? It's a great freaking question.
That really is. I think that's going to be so audience dependent.
Yeah.
And genre dependent on how you tackle that.
Okay, let's talk about, there's a scene I think it's chapter 2 or 3 of Servants of War. It's the first Kristoff scene.
Oh, Kristoff's, it's, if you haven't read Servants, when your introduction to Kristoff, he does some pretty horrible stuff.
Things. He does some horrible things to one individual that just randomly shows up.
Who didn't really deserve it.
Oh, no, of course not.
Yeah.
That's why Kristoff's awesome. So in the initial draft, the person that shows up in that scene is a kid.
Yeah,
it's
he was younger,
like a page or like an altar boy sort of a thing.
Yeah,
that's the vibe I was going. I mean, it's kind of sort of almost Catholic, and so I was going for the altar boy vibe.
Yeah, they're kind of a pseudo-orthodox.
Yeah, and in that original text, I had the boy. It was a boy coming in, and Kristoff is a jerk face, and he has his minion Vasily just murder the ever living crap out of him. In the final version, you'll notice that character is older. And again, I'm a horror guy, so I approached it at the level of what is going to be the worst possible thing that can happen at this moment. And so the kind of the altar boy coming in was the worst version. And I think your phrase to me was, or your feedback to me on that before we switched it to he was just like an assistant priest or something.
Yeah, so somebody a little older.
Yeah, a little bit older. Yeah, a young adult.
A young adult.
Like, I think he was 18 or something like that. You said, "Hey, look, dude, remember, I need my readers need a little hope, Steve. Stop trying to be all nihilistic on me, buddy." But we were doing exactly that. We were thinking of who our readers were.
Yeah, it's a question of tuning.
Yeah.
So there are some things when you're going to write it where you will want to maximize that.
In the same book, all the gas scene, dude, we pulled no freaking punches.
Yeah, we pulled no punches in those.
No, those scenes are violent as heck.
But also at that point, we were far enough into the book too that people were committed, and they also knew what they were getting into.
Oh yeah, we'd made the promises earlier that super bad, terrible gas violence was coming.
Well, and
if we would have pulled back on that, it would not have been authentic.
It would have been inauthentic at that point. Now, what he specifically said, he's like, how do you not glorify the violence? Yeah. I think that's going to also depend on what you're writing, because some things you just embrace the over-the-topness of it, and that's part of the story.
Yeah,
like the snow cutter scene in Monster Hunter Alpha is just incredibly over-the-top, gory.
It's so violent.
It's so violent. It's ridiculously violent. But on that one, I embraced it and I went whole hog with it, and that's what it was. And I would think, like we've talked about, if you're writing Sparkle Princess Adventure,
I was talking with some people about that at the show.
Yeah,
at Gen Con, and they were very excited for me to write something.
Yeah, Steve's doing Sparkle Princess Adventure. What is it, Battle Planet?
I think her exact name is going to be Princess Sparkle Gore.
So on not glorifying the violence, that's an interesting one, because if you're writing, like, say, true crime or Bosch, or police procedural,
you cannot shy away from the violence, especially into Evan's specific question towards the young or the innocent. You cannot shy away from showing how violent that stuff is. However, I think the thing that saves it is the point of view from which you're telling the scene.
Yeah.
In many of these cases, especially the most violent, the most vile crimes that you're seeing in some of these things, I'm thinking of season, I think it's 3 of Bosch, with the ex-military dudes that are stealing the money.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
And there's the kid that gets killed, and they talk about the bleeders and stuff.
Yeah,
we were talking about that in one of
in the action
episodes.
Yeah, where people don't have hit points. Yeah, because they brutally murder this kid.
They're very careful how they show it, but more importantly, they don't dwell on the point of view of the dude that murders him. they dwell on the point of view of Harry Bosch, as he comes upon the scene after.
Because Harry was a street kid.
Harry was a street kid.
So he had that connection and the humanity of it. And and the whole thing of that show is everybody matters or nobody does.
Yep.
And the guy that did the violence is clearly a psychopath.
Well, and no one matters to him.
Yeah, he's a piece of crap. And it's clear he's a piece of crap.
And so, Evan, I think that one of the biggest things the biggest piece of advice we can give you here is it's all about tone. Look, depending on what you're writing, bro, like some of your stuff, you're going to have to be, and I'm assuming that's why you're asking the question. Some of the stuff that you're portraying has to be super real. Like, look, I'm writing Werewolf Cop.
Yeah.
And my first book is about a child abduction and murder ring. Okay. Dude, that's heavy stuff.
It is. Now, another weapon, too, is the classic, and the same thing you do for sex in books if you don't want to write that.
Yeah, cut away.
Cut away.
Yeah.
The Star Wars prequel movies, when Anakin kills all the little kids at the Jedi thing, they cut away.
Yeah.
They're clearly not going to show the guy who's been the hero for 2.5 movies lightsabering a bunch of 6-year-olds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So they cut away, but you know what happens.
Yeah. Look, you can leave when it comes to many things, you can leave the horror into the imagination of the viewer or the reader. Oftentimes we imagine things far worse than they actually are.
Yeah.
But look, it's okay. Like it's okay to write about all this stuff. I was on a panel about horror the other day, and they said, and the question was, how do you know if you've gone too far? And my response was, there's no such thing. That's just a construct. Okay. The reality is, how far are you comfortable going, and how much of your audience are you willing to alienate or to shrink it down?
Yeah.
Okay. I read a lot of the grimdark stuff, and the grimdark stuff tends to be very nihilistic, and it tends to trend towards the very dark, sometimes the depraved. And on occasion, to Evan's point, in my opinion, it goes a little too far sometimes.
Yeah. Well, Game of Thrones,
or I mean, I've read R. Scott Baker. I like R. Scott Baker. His first trilogy. I like that first trilogy quite a bit. But dude, it's messed up. The darker you go with this, without framing it in certain ways, like we talked about with the Bosch scenes, the more you're going to limit your audience. Now, if you're okay with that, then do it. I don't care. You're right. Think about your audience, like Larry said. If you're writing to them, write to them. But I don't know. I just think that this is more a matter of a dial. You're just turning it up and down depending on the scene.
This was going to be nuanced. This is going to be very nuanced depending on audience.
Yeah. So
and personal comfort. If you are uncomfortable writing it, then you don't have to. Like if you don't,
no one's forcing you to write.
Yeah, no one's forcing you to write that stuff that you don't want to write.
But anyway, to not glorify, I think my best advice is to humanize it.
Yeah, definitely.
Whether, generally through POV.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. This is from one of our supporters. His name's Daniel. Okay, and these questions are really good. Well, one's really good, and one's a joke, but we'll laugh about it here in a sec. So the first question is, how do you write characters that are smarter than yourself? And that's great because
that's a good question.
Yeah, ain't nobody accused me of being the smartest guy in the room.
Okay, the biggest secret weapon to this is it's not that people necessarily are smart; it's that they have the right answer at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how fast they come up with that answer.
Yeah.
Here's the beautiful thing about word processing. I have weeks to come up with the strategic genius action that's going to be cool. And also I can make sure it works, whereas they come up with it in one page.
Right.
Because they're smart.
Or in a paragraph, in an instant, right?
Yeah. So that's actually like the biggest cheat I do with Faye and Hard Magic. She's the smartest person in the whole series.
Yeah.
Is I write these crazy run-on sentences as she processes through stuff, and she comes to the right decisions. Yet later on in the series, I reveal that these giant paragraphs are actually like 0.04 of a second.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
as she's reasoning this stuff out.
When I was writing Residue, my cheat for this was Alex knew what everybody else was thinking. So she was the smartest. She wasn't technically the smartest person, but she knew what the smartest people were thinking, and she could regurgitate it. Like, and that's the whole joke, right? Like, if you're the teenager who can read minds, what's the first thing you're going to do? Well, I'm going to cheat the ever-living crap out of everything.
Yep.
So I don't have to deal with it.
I actually found that refreshing.
So now, from a straight-up technical standpoint, dude, this is what subject matter experts are for.
Yeah. It's like me and Mike Cooper writing Dead Six. Stuff we didn't know. We had a special forces colonel, that taught this stuff for a living.
And we talked about on a previous episode the concepts that you were bringing up about breaching seafaring vehicles.
Yeah, we didn't know that stuff.
And so you specifically talked to a guy to make sure that you got it right.
So our characters are smart because we had weeks to do research.
Yeah.
To make sure they were smart.
Oh.
So don't be afraid to borrow from other people's intelligence. Yeah. Like, especially if I'm writing sci-fi and I need to have a character understand like orbital mechanics. I don't understand orbital mechanics at all. That is some complicated stuff. But I know people who do that for a living. And I can get just enough to make it sound like they know what they're doing.
Yep.
There's nothing worse though than having a character that's supposed to be smart because like the author tells you they're smart, but then you never see them actually being smart.
It's okay. So the first new Godzilla movie. And don't get me wrong, I love the new Godzilla movies because they're so big, stupid fun.
Yeah, and Godzilla looks cool.
And Godzilla looks rad.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's
when he's on the screen.
he's a little thick, so to speak. But
THICC.
Yeah, that's right. He's a thick boy.
Thick, scaly boy.
Guys. So the main character is an EOD guy, which to you and I is hilarious because we know actual EOD guys.
Yeah.
And his big, like he keeps talking through the whole thing, how smart he is, and he's EOD, and he knows, and da-da-da-da-da. And his claim to fame is he set it on fire.
Only a genius would be able to think of that.
Only a genius could think of setting something on fire.
Fire hurts living things?
Whoa. That's an example of the negative, right? He keeps telling you, and everyone keeps saying how smart he is because he's EOD. Because real EOD dudes, yeah, they're real freaking smart.
They're smart dudes. They're
have real freaking smart.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Their job is complicated.
But this guy, like, it just didn't work that way.
It was cheesy. They wasted Bryan Cranston in that too.
Oh yeah. Okay. Hopefully that answered your question, Daniel. Here's your second question. You ready for this, Larry?
Okay.
And he starts this question by saying, no bias. Why is the Marine Corps the best branch of the military? No bias.
Dude, we are two civilian, former military contractors. I am not touching that one with a 10-foot pole.
I don't know. Maybe in a crayon eating contest.
Oh.
I'm here all week.
Oh my gosh! I was just on a podcast with two Marines.
Oh, that's right. You were on Peter Nealon's thing, right?
Cupola Presto and Peter Nealon. Yeah, and it was funny because both of them were like, "Yeah, we missed out on the crayon thing. Like our service was just before the crayon thing became like a thing." So everybody keeps sending me like crayon memes. Like, I don't know, dude.
No, in all seriousness, my uncle was career Marine, and so between that and I mean, gosh, you and I, we've known everyone from every branch of the military at some point or another, and we've worked with every branch.
Our
of the
office
military.
was like literally like the tour. Like you go down, it was like, you remember you go down the hall,
yeah,
and it was like Air Force, Navy, Army, Marine, Air Force, Navy.
Yeah, we had
Army,
everyone.
Marine, Navy.
And of course they all had their jokes that they were telling each other, and us cake eating civilians.
We kept our mouths shut during those exchanges.
We just looked at them and nodded and said, "Thank you for your service."
Mostly work with Air Force and Army. That was
the vast majority.
Yeah, I didn't do very much career wise with Navy or Marines.
I ended up after you left. We had some contracts with the Navy. They're fine.
We had Navy guys in our office.
Yeah. In fact, we had the guy who literally wrote the book on
Combat Search and Rescue.
On combat search and rescue.
Yeah, I remember because we were talking to him when we interviewed him for the job. He's like, "What's your writing experience?" He's like, "Well, I wrote the book on combat search and rescue." And we're like, that's
that's
funny.
a great phrase. He's like, no, really, here it is.
No, so like literally, then when he was moving into the office, he's like unpacking his boxes and he gets out the giant book of like combat search and rescue, and it's like literally, he wrote it, and we're like, "Oh,
yeah, you were being serious."
I thought you were joking."
Yeah. Turns out no. All right, Daniel, thank you so much for your questions, and all you supporters, thank you so much. I don't know about you, dude, but I'm always kind of gee-whizzed at the questions that come in.
There's some good ones tonight.
Every time that we get like the batch of questions in, and I think, man, I don't know. These are great questions. I don't know if we're going to get any better ones than this.
Yeah, no, keep coming, guys.
And they just keep coming. They're awesome stuff. All right, everybody. That's all we got for you today. Thank you so much again. You supporters are awesome. Thank you for sending in these questions. This is the Writer Dojo. Larry Correia and I. We'll see you on the next one.
Writer Dojo is Steve Diamond and Larry Correia. Produced by Jack Wilder and Bear and Hare Studios. Theme song, Word Mercenaries by Craig Nivo. New episodes come out every Wednesday wherever you stream your content. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can help support us by going to anchor.fm/WriterDojo, by leaving a 5-star rating and review, and by helping to spread the word. To advertise on the Writer Dojo, email ads@writerdojo.com. All questions and comments can be emailed to questions@writerdojo.com.
Only a genius would be able to think of that.
Only a genius can think of setting something on fire.